everybody. Welcome to Under the Arc Sports. I'm Eric Hobbs.
And I'm David Woldingham.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, it is time to talk the Missouri Tigers and NCAA Tournament seeding. Let the chaos begin. Before we get into that, make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel and find us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Help us out. Like, subscribe, all the things. Thanks. We know a little bit about Missouri and the NCAA tournament. One, we know they're in. That would be one of the biggest shockers of all time if they were not in the field. I feel comfortable, David, saying that Missouri will be seeded no better than a 5 seed, no worse than an 8 seed. I think they've locked themselves into that range, depending on what happens in the SEC tournament. They're sitting here at 23-8 with an 11-7 record in the regular season in conference play. If they win the SEC tournament, they'd be 26-8 with a second win over Tennessee, probably, a win over Bama, probably, and then they'd either get probably a second win over Kentucky or they'd avenge two of their losses, really, to A&M. Or they could lose their first round game to Tennessee and be 23-9, and that loss be to a team they already beat. Those are kind of the ends here. What are your initial thoughts on Missouri's seeding based on where they are now and what you think they can do?
I agree with you in the fact that I don't think we can get any lower than a 9 seed. If you look at
I don't think they'll be a 9 at all, honestly.
Yeah. Okay, so 8 seed then. They had no bad losses.
Yes.
On their record, there's no quad 4 or 3 losses.
There's no quad 2 losses.
Yeah, there's not even quad 2 losses. So when you look at it like that, I almost think if they win the tournament, could they maybe be borderline a 4 seed? It just depends on how the committee looks at that. Because let's think about that. You're looking at a top 10 Alabama team that you may most likely had to beat, and then you're playing a hot A&M team or a hot Kentucky team that you beat. That's 2 more quad 1 wins, possibly 3, depending on where they decide to put Tennessee.
Oh, any win Missouri gets is going to be a quad 1 win here. The computers.
So you're talking 3. You're talking 3 more quad 1 wins on the record, and Mizzou's had a couple of other big quad 1 wins, like Iowa State and Illinois, even for that matter. So it could push them possibly as high as a 4 seed. Now, I tend to agree with you. I'm not sure we'd get that high. I think 5 is more likely. But it's definitely interesting to consider if they pull off the tournament wins. Do I think that's possible? Yes. Do I think it will happen? More likely they'll get 1 or 2 wins in the tournament. And I could see him end up with a 7 seed, honestly. That's kind of where I'm thinking.
Yeah, for Missouri, you look at the wins they have, the fact that all their losses are quad 1 losses, and you wonder, well, how is this team possibly an 8 in a lot of these bracketology things? The predictive metrics, your net rankings, even KenPom, even though that's not really an official part of it, it can influence people, even though it probably shouldn't. These are predictive based on all these things, and Missouri's terrible defense factors in. The computers essentially say, based on the fact that Missouri gives up so many points per game, we expect them to perform this way. Well, Missouri's offense is so good that it doesn't really matter. They're not blowing out teams, but they're winning. Case in point, the LSU game. LSU's terrible, but they gave up north of 70 and they won by only 5. It was a huge comeback. I understand that. But the bottom line is they beat the worst seed in the SEC, a terrible team, by 5 because they just outscored them. That's all the computers see. And games like that are what hurts Missouri. They needed to blow out LSU. They needed to blow out South Carolina. Now, they did blow out Georgia, but they needed more of that. If they would have done that, and even some of the early non-conference games, SEMO, yes, they won their conference tournament, but Missouri only beat SEMO by like 7 points or something. So games like that are what's hurting Missouri's metrics. That's what's going to drag them down. Strictly record, conference record, quad one wins. Yeah, Missouri's looking at more like a 5 or 6 seed, but it's those predictive things that's holding Missouri back. That's the controversy here. And I think we're going to learn a lot about how much the committee weighs those as Missouri's seed becomes known. Now,
well, and the other question is, how much did that non-conference hurt us for how weak it was?
oh yeah, there's no doubt. Now, it's not like you blame Dennis Gates. He put together an easy beginning of the season because he's like, all right, I got a roster full of guys who need to gel. And we weren't, think about November. We were thinking, all right, maybe this team can be an NIT team that maybe my goal was get to Valentine's Day with the tournament being still a plausible thing if things broke the right way. Not it's Valentine's Day. They are this close to being a lock, which is where they were. So, yeah, it's a good problem to have, honestly, for Missouri in terms of reestablishing the program and just getting back to being a perennial contender in the SEC. So,
well, and I wasn't criticizing it at all because they needed to do that with how many newcomers there were.
Yeah, it was the right decision. It's just that they outperformed any expectations to the point that it created a new problem that's totally worth having, given how successful this season's been. Yeah, I'm with you. I think right now, before the tournament play starts, conference tournament play starts, I think Missouri would be a 7. I think if they were to beat Tennessee, and then they would hang with Bama, presumably Bama, I think a 6 seed is not out of the question. I think at that point, they'd be at the mercy of how other teams in conference tournaments did. Somebody like an Iowa going on a run in the Big Ten tournament, that could cost Mizzou a seed. Or them face planting and Mizzou winning a game or two. Mizzou could pass Iowa as one example.
The other thing I would say is it's to Mizzou's advantage to at least win one game in the tournament and try to get into that 7 rating so you're not facing off in the second round against the number 1.
Yeah, because I think that you have your clear number 4, your 4 number 1s. I think you're going to be Kansas, Houston, Alabama, and UCLA. I think those are your 4 1 seeds. I think that's clear to most people. The part that's not fair with this is they're going to seed. All right, here's our 4 number 1s. We're going to send them to these regions. The number 1 overall seed, Bama, Kansas, whoever gets to pick which one they want. And then from there, they're going to, do their S-curve deal. And as that goes, they're going to start avoiding matchups. And maybe Missouri in the tournament committee's eyes has earned a 6. But they're not going to have a rematch. Or they're going to avoid a conference play. They will not put 2 conference teams against each other in the first round. That will not happen. Maybe something like that happens. And just to the logistics of it means Missouri moves down a seed or up a seed, but that could happen. And that becomes increasingly likely as you get further down the seedings. So the 7, 8, 9 seeds are more likely to be circumstances where, kind of controlling that versus your 2, 3, 4s and so forth. So that's one where if Missouri wants to avoid the murkiness of the logistics being half the reason for the seed, yeah, it would behoove them to beat Tennessee, go ahead and beat Bama, beat whoever comes out of the other half, A&M, Kentucky, whoever, and just, reconcile by winning. To use Jim English's old phrase.
If you can get yourself a 5 seed, you can avoid playing those top seeded teams at least until the 4th round. So
then you're talking about, as much as anything, you're looking at a conference champion from a small league. If you take them seriously, I think that's a risky thing for Mizzou. Honestly, they play to the level of the competition. Do they see the name on the jersey and they go itty bitty small school, or do they see the record 29-5 or something like that and say, "Oh, we better and take care of business"? I think that's one where Des Gates is going to have to coach his guys up because they played to the level of their competition a lot.
Yeah, it might very well be a good thing to play a Power 5 school, no matter the seed.
Oh yeah,
I would sooner
Missouri be a 6 than a 5.
Yeah, and
as
some
weird
of
as
that
that
is
sounds.
just to avoid the whole Norfolk State issue.
Well, they're
not to bring up bad memories, but
yeah, I think the sweet spot for Missouri would be a 6 seed. I mean, seven is certainly better than 8, and 6 better than both. But I'd rather be a 6 than a 5 because I think half the time the tournament seeds, these schools based on the name on the jersey, or because of the 5-12 matchup, that stereotypical deal. That's where you have some of your best smaller conference champions is that 12 seed. That's why it's so dangerous. Is they're just undervalued because they come from a small league. And then you have a lot of teams who take the teams lightly. And that's something that this Missouri team, in my mind, seems very susceptible to. So even if Missouri wins the SEC tournament, I mean, that's the only way they're a 5, and maybe not even then. But if that becomes something that's in play, I'd just assume Missouri were a 6.
Well, and I would say they're susceptible to that, but I think Dennis Gates will have them ready because Dennis Gates' team last year over at Cleveland State was one of those 12s or whatever that destroyed people's hopes. So
Yeah.
he knows the consequences of, taking an opponent lightly. So I think he'll have them ready to play. I don't think that's as big of an issue as I think it is. My biggest issue is just matchups. I wouldn't mind playing to smaller schools because you're not playing against the guys like an A&M who has all these long players that go completely against our team. If you have a smaller team, we tend to push them around more and get them to play our pace, and by doing that, we can play our game. So, to me, I'm more interested in getting a 7 or a 6, more to stay out of that the second round potential of playing a 2 or a 1 in the tournament.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I mean, as I said, if you're an 8, you're good playing a 1 in the second round. There's a clear separation in my mind between those 4, Houston, Bama, Kansas, and UCLA, and anybody else.
Mm-hmm.
So I think as an 8, it's real tough sled in the second round if Missouri can get there. Even as a 7, going against a 2, maybe like a Arizona, Purdue, schools like that.
However, it all comes down to you got to win your games. Doesn't matter who you're playing.
Oh yeah. Yeah. So we've got predictions for how we think Missouri's going to do in the SEC tournament. You'll have to watch that video if you want to see those predictions in depth. But based on the predictions that we have and what you think is Missouri sits right now and what's going to happen in other conference tournaments, I'd say, David, I expect Missouri to be a 7. I think that's what's going to end up happening. And yeah, if they're able to get to the second round, it's going to be somebody like an Arizona or a Purdue, more than likely, which not impossible, but tough.
Tough sledding.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Now, if my prediction comes true for the SEC tournament, which I really hope it does, that would bump us a little bit. A little foreshadowing if you haven't seen that. I think that'll push us to a 6 or a 5 and put us in a great position for a decent run in the tournament. As you said, though, you're going to be going up against those top teams eventually, so it really doesn't matter who you play. It's how you come out. If Mizzou comes out hitting their three-pointers, they can beat any team in the country.
Yes.
If they get slowed down, they struggle with the three and have to go into a half-court offense. I don't care who they're playing. It's going to be a battle. And I'm going to be real worried if they don't get to 70 points. I'm real worried that we're not going to win. The track record this year has proven that. I think they only won one game scoring less than 70 points. On the flip side of that, they didn't lose a single game scoring 70 points. Kind of an anomaly, but fun to look at.
Yeah.
Who knows? All I know is a lot of fun's about to happen, and I'm glad we're able to talk about Mizzou being involved in that fun. So, as things unfold, we'll keep you guys updated. Thank you for watching Under the Arch Sports.